Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, we invite you to delve into the literary brilliance of the late 19th century British world and discover the genius writer known for his wit, humor, and social satire, Oscar Wilde. In this special video, we will focus on Wilde's classic quotes, digging deep into his thoughts and exploring the profound impact this literary master has had on people around the world. Oscar Wilde's words act like a mirror, reflecting the contradictions and hypocrisy of Victorian society. His works are not only literary masterpieces, but also profound reflections on humanity, beauty, and societal norms. The philosophical insights from the Picture of Dorian Gray and the subtle societal critiques in comedies like A Woman of No Importance and An Ideal Husband have left a lasting impression within his quotes. In this video, we present to you Oscar Wilde's insightful and thought-provoking quotes, words that go beyond literature, serving as a mirror for contemplating the essence of life. We sincerely invite you to bookmark, like, and share this video, joining us in exploring the wisdom of Oscar Wilde. Let's immerse ourselves in his world of words and experience the timeless philosophical revelations. Thank you for watching, and let's embark together on this captivating journey into the charm of Oscar Wilde. Women are made to be loved, not understood. Everything in the world is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. Consistency is the hallmark of the unimaginative. The tragedy of old age is not that one is old, but that one is young. It is only shallow people who do not judge by appearances. The true mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible. The only way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. I can resist everything but temptation. Some cause happiness wherever they go, others whenever they go. Anybody can make history, only a great man can write it. Literature always anticipates life. It does not copy it, but molds it to its purpose. The 19th century, as we know it, is largely an invention of Balzac. Between men and women there is no friendship possible. There is passion, enmity, worship, love, but no friendship. You must have a cigarette. A cigarette is the perfect type of a perfect pleasure. It is exquisite, and it leaves one unsatisfied. What more can one want? One choose my friends for their good looks, my acquaintances for their good characters, and my enemies for their intellects. A man cannot be too careful in the choice of his enemies. The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to someone else if she is plain. Every woman is a rebel, and usually in wild revolt against herself. Gossip is charming, history is merely gossip, but scandal is gossip made tedious by morality. As for believing things, I can believe anything provided that it is quite incredible. The only difference between a caprice and a lifelong passion is that the caprice lasts a little longer. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. In this world there are only two tragedies. One is not getting what one wants, and the other is getting it. The last is much the worst. The last is a real tragedy. Punctuality is the thief of time. Selfishness is not living as one wishes to live. It is asking others to live as one wishes to live. Youth is the only thing worth having. When I find that I am growing old, I shall kill myself. A man who moralizes is usually a hypocrite, and a woman who moralizes is invariably plain. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. There is no sin except stupidity. The best way to make children good is to make them happy. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel certain that they mean something else. The mystery of love is greater than the mystery of death. The worst form of tyranny the world has ever known, the tyranny of the weak over the strong. It is the only tyranny that lasts. Questions are never indiscreet. Answers sometimes are. No artist has ethical sympathies. An ethical sympathy in an artist is an unpardonable mannerism of style. Sarcasm is the lowest form of wit. Nothing spoils a romance so much as a sense of humor in the woman. Mere color, unspoiled by meaning, and unallied with definite form, can speak to the soul in 1,000 different ways. The world was my oyster, but I used the wrong fork. Discontent is the first step in the progress of a man or a nation. Society exists only as a mental concept. In the real world, there are only individuals. Bad art is a great deal worse than no art at all. Conversation about the weather is the last refuge of the unimaginative. Bigamy is having one wife to many. Monogamy is the same. Nowadays, all the married men live like bachelors, and all the bachelors like married men. A good friend will always stab you in the front. The old believe everything, the middle-aged suspect everything, the young know everything. It is so easy to convince others, it is so difficult to convince oneself. One must have a heart of stone to read the death of little Nell without laughing. Men marry because they are tired, women because they are curious. Both are disappointed. I never put off till tomorrow what I can possibly do the day after. Industry is the root of all ugliness. To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both seems like carelessness. Popularity is the crown of laurel which the world puts on bad art. Whatever is popular is wrong. As a wicked man, I am a complete failure. Why? There are lots of people who say I have never really done anything wrong in the whole course of my life. Of course, they only say it behind my back. One should never trust a woman who tells one her real age. A woman who would tell anything. For he who lives more lives than one, more deaths than one must die. The only thing to do with good advice is to pass it on. It is never of any use to oneself. 20 years of romance make a woman look like a ruin, but 20 years of marriage make her something like a public building. The books that the world calls immoral are books that show the world its own shame. The exquisite art of idleness, one of the most important things that any university can teach. The well-bred contradict other people, the wise contradict themselves. In America, the young are always ready to give to those who are older than themselves the full benefits of their inexperience. Faithfulness is to the emotional life what consistency is to the life of the intellect, simply a confession of failure. The world is changed because you are made of ivory and gold. The curves of your lips rewrite history. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being good all the time. That would be hypocrisy. The man who can dominate a London dinner table can dominate the world. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. I am so clever that sometimes I don't understand a single word of what I am saying. The world is divided into two classes, those who believe the incredible and those who do the improbable. Public opinion, an attempt to organize the ignorance of the community, and to elevate it to the dignity of physical force. Duty is what one expects from others. In a very ugly and sensible age, the arts borrow, not from life, but from each other. All bad poetry springs from genuine feeling. To be natural is to be obvious, and to be obvious is to be inartistic. This morning I took out a comma, and this afternoon I put it back in again. Lying, a telling of beautiful and true things. This is the proper aim of art. The stage is not merely the meeting place of all the arts, but is also the return of art to life. There is no such thing as morality or immorality in thought. There is immoral emotion, and the wild regrets, and the bloody sweats. None knew so well as I, for he who lives more lives than one, more deaths than one, must die. An acquaintance that begins with a compliment is sure to develop into a real friendship. Religions die when they are proved to be true. Science is the record of dead religions. Life is far too important a thing ever to talk seriously about. Genius lasts longer than beauty. That accounts for the fact that we all take such pains to overeducate ourselves. The man who sees both sides of a question is a man who sees absolutely nothing. We can have in life but one great experience at best, and the secret of life is to reproduce that experience as often as possible. Arguments are to be avoided. They are always vulgar and often convincing. Imagination is a quality given a man to compensate him for what he is not, and a sense of humor was provided to console him for what he is. No man is rich enough to buy back his past. Dullness is the coming of age of seriousness. Society often forgives the criminal, it never forgives the dreamer. One should never trust a woman who tells one her real age, a woman who would tell one that would tell one anything. He has no enemies, but is intensely disliked by his friends. I can stand brute force, but brute reason is quite unbearable. There is something unfair about its use. It is hitting below the intellect. There are only two tragedies in life. One is not getting what one wants, and the other is getting it. She lacks the indefinable charm of weakness. All art is at once surface and symbol. Those who go beneath the surface do so at their peril. The greatest of all sins is stupidity. Why was I born with such contemporaries? The pure and simple truth is rarely pure and never simple. A man cannot be too careful in the choice of his enemies. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last. It is curious how vanity helps the successful man and wrecks the failure. Where there is sorrow, there is holy ground. Nowadays, to be intelligible is to be found out. Only mediocrities progress. An artist revolves in a cycle of masterpieces, the first of which is no less perfect than the last. Simple pleasures are the last refuge of the complex. A pessimist is one who, when he has the choice of two evils, chooses both. Philanthropic people lose all sense of humanity. It is their distinguishing characteristic. This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last. When a woman marries again, it is because she detested her first husband. When a man marries again, it is because he adored his first wife. Women try their luck, men risk theirs. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. The secret of remaining young is never to have an emotion that is unbecoming. You should study the peerage, Gerald. It is the one book a young man about town should know thoroughly, and it is the best thing in fiction the English have ever done. Mere color unspoiled by meaning and unallied with definite form can speak to the soul in 1,000 different ways. It is only the modern that ever becomes old-fashioned. I never approve or disapprove of anything now. It is an absurd attitude to take towards life. We are not sent into the world to air our moral prejudices. I never take any notice of what common people say, and I never interfere with what charming people do. The old believe everything, the middle-aged suspect everything, and the young know everything. Skepticism is the beginning of faith. In this world there are only two tragedies. One is not getting what one wants, and the second is getting it. We can forgive a man for making a useful thing as long as he does not admire it. The only excuse for making a useless thing is that one admires it intensely. A little sincerity is a dangerous thing, and a great deal of it is absolutely fatal. When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring. Laughter is not a bad beginning for a friendship, and it is the best ending for one. All art is quite useless. Private information is practically the source of every large modern fortune. Conversation should touch everything, but should concentrate itself on nothing. Philanthropy has become simply the refuge of people who wish to annoy their fellow creatures. Keep love in your heart. A life without it is like a sunless garden when the flowers are dead. Work is the refuge of people who have nothing better to do. Experience is merely the name men gave to their mistakes. Für den Philosophen sind die Frauen der Triumph der Materie bei den Geist, genau wie deine der Triumph der Geist bei die Moral sind. Yet each man kills the thing he loves from all. Let this be heard. Some does it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with the sword. It is a very sad thing that nowadays there is so little useless information. He must have a truly romantic nature, for he weeps when there is nothing at all to weep about. Books are well written or badly written, that is all. The only difference between a caprice and a lifelong passion is that the caprice lasts a little longer. Cheap editions of great books may be delightful, but cheap editions of great men are absolutely detestable. For his mourners will be outcast men, and outcasts always mourn. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Cicely, this is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade. Gwendolen, satirically. I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different. He was always late on principle, his principle being that punctuality is the thief of time. The longer I live, the more keenly I feel that whatever was good enough for our fathers is not good enough for us. One should absorb the color of life, but one should never remember its details. Democracy means simply the bludgeoning of the people by the people for the people. The only form of lying that is absolutely beyond reproach is lying for its own sake. Miss Prismemory, my dear Cicely, is the diary that we all carry about with us. To do nothing at all is the most difficult thing in the world, the most difficult and the most intellectual. Fathers should be neither seen nor heard. That is the only proper basis for family life. Civilization is not by any means an easy thing to attain to. There are only two ways by which man can reach it. One is by being cultured, the other by being corrupt. There is no such thing as a moral book or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. That is all. Vulgarity is the conduct of other people, just as falsehoods are the truths of other people. I love acting. It is so much more real than life. I never change, except in my affections. From the point of view of literature, Mr. Kipling is a genius who drops his aspirates. From the point of view of life, he is a reporter who knows vulgarity better than anyone has ever known it. America had often been discovered before Columbus, but it had always been hushed up. One should either be a work of art, or we're a work of art. Wickedness is a myth invented by good people to account for the curious attraction of others. What is said of a man is nothing, the point is, who says it. Young people nowadays imagine that money is everything. Yes, murmured Lord Henry, settling his buttonhole in his coat, and when they grow older they know it. One should always be in love. That is the reason one should never marry. No work of art ever puts forward views. Views belong to people who are not artists. Nothing can cure the soul but the senses, just as nothing can cure the senses but the soul. The imagination imitates. It is the critical spirit that creates. Only the shallow know themselves. L'inferno il paradiso sono tutti I du dentro di noi. Memory is the diary that we all carry about with us. I know, in fact, I am never wrong. There is a luxury in self-reproach. When we blame ourselves, we feel that no one else has a right to blame us. It is the confession, not the priest, that gives us absolution. It often happens that the real tragedies of life occur in such an inartistic manner that they hurt us by their crude violence, their absolute incoherence, their absurd want of meaning, their entire lack of style. People sometimes inquire what form of government is most suitable for an artist to live under. To this question there is only one answer. The form of government that is most suitable to the artist is no government at all. Even things that are true can be proved. Ms. Allenby, she told me yesterday, and in quite a loud voice too, that she was only 18. It was most annoying. Lord Illingworth, one should never trust a woman who tells one her real age. A woman who would tell one that would tell one anything. If one could only teach the English how to talk, and the Irish how to listen, society here would be quite civilized. Do you really think it is weakness that yields to temptation? I tell you that there are terrible temptations which it requires strength and courage to yield to. To regret one's own experiences is to arrest one's own development. To deny one's own experiences is to put a lie into the lips of one's own life. It is no less than a denial of the soul. The brain had its own food on which it battened, and the imagination made grotesque by terror, twisted and distorted as a living thing by paintings like some foul puppet on a stand, and grinned through moving masks. Wenn ihn Frau Fälle nicht charmant begehen kann, ist sie nichts als ein Weib. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. The fact is that civilization requires slaves. Human slavery is wrong, insecure, and demoralizing. On mechanical slavery, on the slavery of the machine, the future of the world depends. When good Americans die, they go to Paris. Women are never disarmed by compliments. Men always are. That is the difference between the sexes. Algernon have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss. I can stand brute force, but brute reason is quite unbearable. It is hitting below the intellect. Modern pictures are, no doubt, delightful to look at least some of them are, but they are quite impossible to live with. They are too clever, too assertive, too intellectual. Their meaning is too obvious, and their method too clearly defined. 1. I can sympathize with everything, except suffering. One can give a really unbiased opinion only about things that do not interest one, which is no doubt the reason an unbiased opinion is always valueless. The man who sees both sides of a question is a man who sees absolutely nothing. To live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That is all. Pleasure is the only thing to live for. Nothing ages like happiness. What is mind but motion in the intellectual sphere? Dear Prince, I must leave you, but I will never forget you, and next spring I will bring you back to beautiful jewels in place of those you have given away. The ruby shall be redder than a red rose, and the sapphire shall be as blue as the great sea. Charity creates a multitude of sins. The basis of optimism is sheer terror. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing. I think God, in creating man, somewhat overestimated his ability. The Picture of Dorian Gray. Yet each man kills the thing he loves. By each let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. Young men want to be faithful and are not. Old men want to be faithless and cannot. In married life, 3 is company and 2 none. It is better to have a permanent income than to be fascinating. The way of paradoxes is the way of truth. To test reality, we must see it on the tightrope. When the verities become acrobats, we can judge them. A thing is not necessarily true because a man dies for it. A work of art is the unique result of a unique temperament. London is full of women who trust their husbands. One can always recognize them. They look so thoroughly unhappy. Biography lends to death a new terror. One's real life is so often the life that one does not lead. I don't want to be at the mercy of my emotions. I want to use them to enjoy them and to dominate them. The only thing to do with good advice is to pass it on. It is never of any use to oneself. I was working on the proof of one of my poems all the morning and took out a comma. In the afternoon, I put it back again. I have learned this: it is not what one does that is wrong, but what one becomes as a consequence of it. The past could always be annihilated. Regret, denial, or forgetfulness could do that, but the future was inevitable. I like men who have a future and women who have a past. Oh, duty is what one expects from others. It is not what one does oneself. Scandal is gossip made tedious by morality. To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect. It is better to be beautiful than to be good, but it is better to be good than to be ugly. It is because humanity has never known where it was going that it has been able to find its way. With an evening coat and a white tie, anybody, even a stockbroker, can gain a reputation for being civilized. I have never admitted that I am more than 29 or 30 at the most. 29 when there are pink shades, 30 when there are not. The value of an idea has nothing whatever to do with the sincerity of the man who expresses it. The moment you think you understand a great work of art, it's dead for you. Most people are boring and stupid. A sentimentalist is simply one who desires to have the luxury of an emotion without paying for it. The public have an insatiable curiosity to know everything, except what is worth knowing. Journalism, conscious of this and having tradesman-like habits, supplies their demands. True friends stab you in the front. The only way a woman can ever reform a man is by boring him so completely that he loses all possible interest in life. When a man says he has exhausted life, one always knows life has exhausted him. I regard the theatre as the greatest of all art forms, the most immediate way in which a human being can share with another the sense of what it is to be a human being. Friendship is far more tragic than love, it lasts longer. He would stab his best friend for the sake of writing an epigram on his tombstone. I am afraid that women appreciate cruelty, downright cruelty, more than anything else. They have wonderfully primitive instincts. We have emancipated them, but they remain slaves looking for their masters all the same. They love being dominated. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask, and he will tell you the truth. He had that curious love of green, which in individuals is always the sign of a subtle artistic temperament, and in nations is said to denote a laxity, if not a decadence of morals. I can resist everything except temptation. Philosophy may teach us to bear with equanimity the misfortunes of our neighbors. To be good, according to the vulgar standard of goodness, is obviously quite easy. It merely requires a certain amount of sordid terror, a certain lack of imaginative thought, and a certain low passion for middle-class respectability. There is no necessity to separate the monarch from the mob. All authority is equally bad. As for begging, it is safer to beg than to take, but it is finer to take than to beg. Romance should never begin with sentiment. It should begin with science and end with a settlement. An excellent man, he has no enemies, and none of his friends like him. Yes, I am a dreamer. For a dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the dawn before the rest of the world. To make men socialists is nothing, but to make socialism human is a great thing. Alas, I am dying beyond my means. There is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. One can survive everything nowadays, except death. It is only an auctioneer who can equally and impartially admire all schools of art. One knows so well the popular idea of health, the English country gentleman galloping after a fox, the unspeakable in full pursuit of the uneatable. Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. By giving us the opinions of the uneducated, journalism keeps us in touch with the ignorance of the community. The modern sympathy with invalids is morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. A dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the dawn before the rest of the world. I want my food dead, not sick, not dying, dead. Then I feel hairy that I have given away my whole soul to someone who treats it as if it were a flower to put in his coat, a bit of decoration to charm his vanity, an ornament for a summer's day. Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives are mimicry, their passions a quotation. I can resist anything except temptation. Always forgive your enemies, nothing annoys them so much. When one is in love, one always begins by deceiving oneself, and one always ends by deceiving others. That is what the world calls a romance. Good resolutions are useless attempts to interfere with scientific laws. Their origin is pure vanity. Their result is absolutely nil. They give us, now and then, some of those luxurious sterile emotions that have a certain charm for the weak. I sometimes think that God in creating man somewhat overestimated his ability. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. The play was a great success, but the audience was a disaster. As one knows the poet by his fine music, so one can recognize the liar by his rich rhythmic utterance, and in neither case will the casual inspiration of the moment suffice. Here, as elsewhere, practice must precede perfection. There are many things that we would throw away if we were not afraid that others might pick them up. I delight in men over 70. They always offer one the devotion of a lifetime. All thought is immoral. Its very essence is destruction. If you think of anything, you kill it. Nothing survives being thought of. Rich bachelors should be heavily taxed. It is not fair that some men should be happier than others. No great artist ever sees things as they really are. If he did, he would cease to be an artist. Women are never disarmed by compliments. Men always are. That is the difference between the two sexes. Experience is one thing you can't get for nothing. This wallpaper is dreadful. One of us will have to go. Consistency is the last refuge of the unimaginative. To disagree with 3/4 of the British public is one of the first requisites of sanity. The one charm of the past is that it is the past. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes, and probably lead to acts of violence. A poet can survive anything but a misprint. I put all my genius into my life. I put only my talent into my works. Time is waste of money. Through our sunless lanes creeps poverty with her hungry eyes, and sin with his sodden face follows close behind her. Misery wakes us in the morning, and shame sits with us at night. There are few things easier than to live badly and die well. Good artists exist simply in what they make and consequently are perfectly uninteresting in what they are. Marriage is the triumph of imagination over intelligence. We are each our own devil and we make this world our hell. I adore simple pleasures. They are the last refuge of the complex. A poet can survive everything but a misprint. Meredith is a prose Browning, and so is Browning. He used poetry as a medium for writing in prose. With age comes wisdom, but sometimes age comes alone. Newspapers have degenerated. They may now be absolutely relied upon. An artist should create beautiful things, but should put nothing of his own life into them. The basis of action is lack of imagination. It is the last resource of those who know not how to dream. No man dies for what he knows to be true. Men die for what they want to be true, for what some terror in their hearts tells them is not true. Whenever people agree with me, I always feel I must be wrong. The community is infinitely more brutalist by the habitual employment of punishment than it is by the occasional occurrence of crime. My own business always bores me to death. I prefer other people's. I see when men love women, they give them but a little of their lives, but women when they love give everything. Yes, I am a thorough Republican. No other form of government is so favorable to the growth of art. The cynic knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means. The optimist sees the donut, the pessimist sees the hole. Work is the curse of the drinking classes. Flowers are as common in the country as people are in London. Men always want to be a woman's first love. Women like to be a man's last romance. There is always something ridiculous about the emotions of people whom one has ceased to love. Indeed, I have always been of the opinion that hard work is simply the refuge of people who have nothing to do. And when wind and winter harden all the loveless land, it will whisper of the garden you will understand. Excerpt from To My Wife. Musical people are so absurdly unreasonable. They always want one to be perfectly dumb at the very moment when one is longing to be absolutely deaf. The world has grown suspicious of anything that looks like a happily married life. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. All bad poetry springs from genuine feeling. All that I desire to point out is the general principle that life imitates art far more than art imitates life. The salesman knows nothing of what he is selling save that he is charging a great deal too much for it. Whenever a man does a thoroughly stupid thing, it is always from the noblest motive. Who, being loved, is poor? There is only one thing in life worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. If there was less sympathy in the world, there would be less trouble in the world. One should always play fairly when one has the winning cards. Affibun insimna aithi in harmony ku tainun suti, dissonanta insimna aithi in harmony ku otir. A truth ceases to be true when more than one person believes in it. Life is never fair, and perhaps it is a good thing for most of us that it is not. The critic has to educate the public, the artist has to educate the critic. Seriousness is the only refuge of the shallow. One should always play fair when one has the winning cards. In America, the president reigns for 4 years, and journalism governs forever and ever. We have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language. One is tempted to define man as a rational animal who always loses his temper when he is called upon to act in accordance with the dictates of reason. How strange a thing this is! The priest telleth me that the soul is worth all the gold in the world, and the merchants say that it is not worth a clipped piece of silver. It is absurd to divide people into good and bad. People are either charming or tedious. Lady Bracknell, to speak frankly, I am not in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's character before marriage, which I think is never advisable. In all matters of opinion, our adversaries are insane. Only dull people are brilliant at breakfast. If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life. The world is a stage, but the play is badly cast. How else, but through a broken heart may Lord Christ enter in? Action is the last resource of those who know not how to dream. To become a spectator of one's own life is to escape the suffering of life. It is very difficult sometimes to keep awake, especially at church, but there is no difficulty at all about sleeping. Life has always poppies in her hands. Anybody can write a 3-volume novel. It merely requires a complete ignorance of both life and literature. Thank you, dear friends, for joining us on this fascinating encounter with Oscar Wilde. We hope this exploration has sparked inspiration in your hearts. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, bookmark, and share it with your friends. Feel free to share your thoughts on Oscar Wilde and your favorite quotes in the comments section. Let's preserve and spread the wisdom of this literary master together. Thank you. And until we meet again in the next video.